Ever wonder how huge international loans really work? You might think a country borrows money, buys what it needs, and that's that. But what if the whole system is rigged? Today, we're diving deep into the shadowy world of finance, capital, and how it shapes global trade, often in ways that are anything but fair. Let's start with some fascinating data from the early 20th century. A researcher named Landsberg looked at how German exports changed after Germany gave loans to other countries. For example, in 1891, Germany's exports to Romania were 55 million marks, right after a big loan, but the very next year, they dropped to 39 million, and kept falling. It was only after 2 new loans that the export numbers shot back up. We see the same pattern with Portugal. After loans in the late 1880s, exports rose to 21 million marks, only to crash to just 7 million 2 years later. They didn't recover for over a decade. Argentina's story is even more dramatic. After loans were issued, German exports hit a massive 60 million marks. 2 years later, they plummeted to 18 million, less than a third of the original amount. It took new loans, for things like power stations, for the numbers to climb back up. So, what's going on here? Landsberg concluded that this kind of trade, tied to loans, is unstable and irregular. He thought it was a bad idea to invest capital abroad instead of building up home industries, but he missed the real game being played. The facts don't show that loan-based trade is bad. They show exactly how finance capital operates. It's not about stable, harmonious development. It's about skinning the ox twice. First, the banks and financiers make a profit from the interest on the loan itself. That's a given. But then, they make a second profit because the loan often comes with strings attached. The borrowing country has to use the money to buy goods from the lender's country. So, the loan money flows right back to the lender's own corporations, like the Steel Syndicate, or industrial giants like Krupp. It's a closed loop of profit. The initial export boom isn't a sign of healthy trade. It's the sound of the loan money being spent as directed. Once the money is gone, the exports collapse, until the next loan is needed. It's a cycle of dependency, designed for maximum profit. This brings us to a crucial debate about imperialism. Some thinkers, like Karl Kautsky, tried to downplay these contradictions. He proposed a theory of ultra-imperialism. He imagined a future where the big financial powers wouldn't fight each other anymore. Instead, they would unite to jointly exploit the world. It sounds kind of nice, doesn't it? A new phase of capitalism without the constant rivalry and war? He called it conceivable. But here's the thing. Another writer, Hobson, had described a very similar idea 13 years earlier, calling it inter-imperialism. The only real progress Kautsky made was to slap a new Latin prefix on it and try to sell it as a fresh Marxist insight. In reality, this idea was just a comforting fantasy. Hobson's idea came after the Anglo-Boer War, a time when the British public was reeling from the costs of war, both in lives and taxes. They needed a story to tell them that it was all worth it, that imperialism wasn't so bad, and that a permanent peace was just around the corner. Kautsky's theory, whether he intended it or not, served the same purpose. It was a reactionary way to console the masses. It tells people, don't worry about the sharp conflicts and brutal exploitation of today. Just look forward to this imaginary, peaceful ultra-imperialism of the future. It's a classic misdirection, distracting people from the real problems right in front of them. To see why this idea of a peaceful, united ultra-imperialism is a fantasy, we just need to look at reality. Think about massive countries like India, Indochina, and China back in that era. They were being exploited by the finance capital of several imperialist powers at once. Great Britain, France, Japan, the US, and others. Now, let's imagine these imperialist countries form an alliance to peacefully divide up Asia. Kautsky suggests this is a conceivable path to a more stable world. We even have real historical examples of such alliances, like the way the great powers acted together in China during the Boxer Rebellion. But here's the critical question. If we assume capitalism remains the system, could such an alliance ever be permanent? Could it eliminate friction, conflict, and struggle for good? The answer has to be no. Why? Because under capitalism, the only basis for dividing up spheres of influence, colonies, and markets is strength. This means a country's economic, financial, and military power. And here's the key. The strength of these powers is never static. It's always changing. The development of different companies, industries, and entire countries is inherently uneven under capitalism. Just think, half a century before this period, Germany was considered a relatively insignificant country compared to the mighty British Empire. Japan was similarly weak compared to Russia. Is it even remotely conceivable that in another 10 or 20 years, the relative power of these nations would stay the same? Absolutely not. New powers rise, old ones decline. Therefore, these inter-imperialist or ultra-imperialist alliances are never anything more than a temporary truce between wars. They are pauses, not permanent solutions. Peaceful alliances are used to prepare for future wars, and wars, in turn, lead to new alliances to divvy up the spoils. It's a continuous cycle of peaceful and non-peaceful struggle, all happening on the same foundation of imperialist competition. Kautsky's theory tries to break this chain, presenting a fantasy of peaceful cooperation to the workers, while ignoring the violent conflict that is sure to follow. This is why understanding the true nature of finance capital is so important. It's not just about economics, it's about power, domination, and conflict. The striving for domination is built into the system. It leads to the oppression of nations and the constant drive for annexation, the violation of national independence. As capital flows into new countries, it completely revolutionizes them. It awakens a sense of national consciousness and resistance among the people. This resistance threatens the profits of foreign capital, which then responds by increasing its military force to maintain control. This isn't just happening in newly opened up countries either. Even in older nations, imperialism intensifies these tensions. So, when theorists object to the ugly political features of imperialism, like annexations, but ignore the fundamental economic contradictions driving them, they are missing the point. You can't separate the politics from the economics. You can't wish away the conflicts while the underlying system of competition and exploitation remains. A Japanese person condemning America's annexation of the Philippines might sound noble, but would you believe they're sincere if they didn't also condemn Japan's annexation of Korea? The critique has to be consistent and aimed at the root of the problem. Theories like ultra-imperialism are ultimately a way to gloss over these fundamental contradictions. They try to preserve a fragile unity by promising a future peace that the system itself makes impossible. By separating the idea of a peaceful alliance from the inevitable conflict that follows, it presents a lifeless abstraction. It's like showing one link in a chain and pretending the rest of the chain doesn't exist. But the reality is a living, breathing connection between periods of imperialist peace and periods of imperialist war. They are two sides of the same coin. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown insightful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into how our world really works. See you next time.